Good afternoon and welcome back to the You Will Forum. My name is Kenny Yarbrough and I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Support Programs. And today we have a breakout in concurrent session number 2, How to Ace Your Interview with William J. Thomas III. I became a... Hmm? All right, so we're back. So let's talk about who William J. Thomas III is. So we call him Tipper. And I became acquainted with this young man, I would say around 2013 when I saw him present at Hillsborough State Community College in Tampa, Florida. He has a story that is phenomenal. He has a lived experience that is commendable, and I am so elated to have him with us today. He is an active mentor and community servant. Tipper has founded the William Tipper Thomas Foundation, which is an organization that facilitates programming to improve urban community health issues related to mental health, trauma, informed care, race relations, and violence prevention programs. And he also promotes STEM education. He is an advocate for people who live with disabilities, and he has been featured on panels and keynote events with several professional athletes from the NBA, WNBA, NFL, as well as public celebrities. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I would like to introduce to some and present to others none other than William J. Thomas III, or Tipper.
Thanks, Doc. I appreciate the kind and generous introduction. Um, the thing about introductions and bios is that they don't ever really tell you a lot of stuff that went in between the highlights that are given on bios. But if the audience comes back tomorrow, I'll be more than willing to share some of the in between and fill in the details of what my story is during the keynote tomorrow. But today, however, we are here to talk about how to ace your interview. And just some of my learned experiences and knowledge gained throughout my professional career and some of my time spent as a technical recruiter for my company. Let's get started. So first, we have some key topic areas. I'll call them tips. As Dr. Yarbrough mentioned that my nickname is Tipper, so in short, it's Tip. So tips. We're gonna do some interview preparation tips. I'm gonna give you some resume writing tips. Going to go over a few of the student volunteer examples that were presented to me leading up to the conference. I'm going to give some professional attire tips, how to make a positive impression, interviewing tips, review of the key takeaways, and I will allow for time for question and answer if we have that capability. Next slide. So first up on the list is being prepared. How do you prepare for your interview, right? My first tip is brush up on the company history, how the company was founded, visit their website, right? There's plenty of information, there should be plenty of information shared on the website on how the company was founded. For example, when I started working for my company, Northrop Grumman, I did my research and I found that Northrop Grumman is a merger of two smaller emerging companies that their founders, Jack Northrop and Leroy Grumman, thought that their combined expertise in the radar and defense electronics would be better served as a united front in the aerospace and defense industry. And 50-something odd years later, we're one of the premier defense contractors and in the aerospace and defense industry. You will want to learn what the company's mission statement is, the company's core values, the company's core beliefs. Do they have a stance on things like social justice? Do they believe in diversity and inclusion? If they do, there will be plenty of evidence suggested on their website because companies love good PR. Second point, learn about company recent news, events, victories, any type of new contracts that they've won. All of these things will tell you the type of direction that the company is headed in and if there is a viable future for you at that company. If you know if they won several big contracts, you know there will be plenty of work for you to be involved in the future moving forward. If possible, visit the physical location of the place you're interviewing for. This is especially important for us with disabilities because your resume isn't supposed to mention that you're a person who lives with a disability. So the interviewer may not know to give you or extend you certain accommodations that you may need in order for your interview to be successful. Visiting the site will give you an opportunity to email the interviewer or whomever set up the interview to ask questions about accommodations. And if those accommodations aren't currently prepared, it gives the company an opportunity to either move the location of the interview, move the room that the interview is located in, give you best advice on where to park and what entrance to use to enter the building. Also, it gives you an opportunity to bring your own accommodations if necessary. I have a few other friends who are wheelchair bound, and sometimes they carry portable ramps in their cars with them in case the location that we're going to or that they're going to has one or two steps and doesn't have a ramp or elevator available. They have their own accommodation in the portable ramp in their car, which will allow them access to the building. Also, if you're a person who is vision impaired, it gives you an opportunity to count your steps from your drop-off location to the entrance of the building. All of this is designed to help you keep your stress down leading into the interview, right? You don't want to go into your interview having to overcome so many challenges just to get to the interview and try to calm yourself down to be able to perform your best on the interview. So try to do as much preparation work as possible. If you can't physically visit the company, doing a simple Google Maps or images search of the physical location can usually give you that level of detail. They have 3D maps that will allow you to zoom and spin around the location to see, what accommodations you may need in order to enter the building that you're interviewing in. Secondly, have prepared questions, right? Companies love when you have questions about them. It shows a level of interest that you really want to work for them, and it shows that you've been paying attention during the interview. What type of questions should you ask? Things such as, what are your expectations in the first 90 days of filling this position? Can you tell me about growth opportunities? How would you describe the leadership style in the company? All of these things will give you valuable information to let you know even if you still want to work for this company, right? But the biggest takeaway I can give you for preparing for an interview is if you do not do your homework, it doesn't matter how good you look or how good your resume is. If you don't know about the company you're interviewing for, the interviewer will notice and they will feel that you're not interested in really working for them. Please do your homework. A few words about your resume. Don't be a trendsetter. You do not have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to use any funky fonts or wacky bullets in your resume. An old English professor of mine told me when I was in grade school, a simple acronym called KISS, keep it simple, stupid. The same rules applies to resumes, right? Presentation, the presentation of your resume and the organizational structure of your resume matters. Be clear and concise, use bold and italics to differentiate, and use spacing and indents to create levels in your resume. Be specific, add as much detail as possible. If you're an events coordinator, be specific about what activities you coordinated, for the type of audience you coordinate activities for, the age of that audience, what activities were planned, how many people participated, how frequent were these activities, what were the outcomes of these activities, and how did you measure that outcome? As many details as you can offer, the better. Next about your resume is be truthful. Please be truthful. It is extremely important that you're truthful on your resume. It's the interviewer's sole job to ask you targeted questions to see if you really have the skills and experiences that you are stating on your resume. My job as a technical recruiter when I go to career fairs and I'm interviewing potential engineering students for jobs at my company is to solely find out if they know what they're talking about. The HR representative that is sent to the career fair, their job is to make sure you have the basics needed to fulfill the job, where it be the proper GPA, whether you will be willing to relocate, what's your expectation graduation, what's your expectation on graduation, what type of salary requirements are you looking for, etc. However, the technical recruiter on the job, it's his job or her job to make sure that you can speak specifically about the things that the job role will entail. Because 9 times out of 10, the technical recruiter is someone that you probably will be working with on a day-to-day basis. So their job is to make sure that you know how to do the job that you're applying for. Make sure everything that you put on your resume is relevant and relevant to the job that you're applying for, the position you're applying for, the company and industry that you're applying for. If the interviewer asks about gaps in your work experience, it's okay to say that I was employed during these times. However, that job or that role wasn't applicable to this job that I'm applying for now. That's perfectly fine. The interviewer, that they know that you're only supposed to have relevant information on your resume. Next, as I mentioned before, I had an opportunity to work with several student volunteers who were interested in the executive coaching portion of this summit. And I wanted to take an opportunity to pull up some of their resumes so I can demonstrate some of the details that I suggested to them that they include on their resume to make their resume more attractive. Let's see. Okay, so first up, we have Mr. Stephen Carlos. I whited out his personal information. But so first thing that I noticed about Mr. Carlos's resume is his objective. I thought it needed to be written better. Try having something along the lines of hardworking student with a passion for video and audio production, seeking the opportunity to apply my experience to to fulfill a challenging role. All right. Very next thing I suggested to him was make sure your education is listed. Also, of keynote, make sure when you list your major and your minor, list the type of bachelor or master's you're receiving. Bachelor's of Science, Bachelor of Administration, Bachelor of Education, etc. Make sure that's explicitly written out on your resume. He has the skills listed, which could have used some work. Also, I suggested to Stephen to include his skills in his objective in long format. I suggested to him to change his experiences title to relevant experience, professional experience, or work experience, industry experience, etc. And the details that I mentioned before, I asked for him to add descriptive details about, how many films did he work on? What was the process of filmmaking? What did he travel to Milwaukee and Chicago for? What was his role in traveling? Was he just a tag along? Did he coordinate the travel schedules, etc.? As a director and producer, I asked Stephen to include information such as what was this TV show about? Who was it for? Was it a student-led organization? Things of that nature. Below, I mentioned I wanted to point out under membership awards and certifications, when I mentioned the relevant details only, Mr. Stephen listed that he's a black belt in Shotokan Karate Outstanding Spirit Award at the Kanjo Karate Club. Although it's awesome and noteworthy, him being a black belt in karate has nothing to do with him trying to get a job in audio and video production. Also, he has listed he's a commercial drone pilot license. Again, awesome. However, if you're not using these drones to shoot film, from a sky view, from a bird's eye view, it's not relevant to the job that he's applying for. Now, if he does have that ability and that skill, then he should include it as such. And I promise you, it will be a boon to his resume. The next student was Mr. Hans Martel. Again, his personal information was whited out. I suggested, he create a professional summary, such as the one that Stephen created, and include these skills in that professional summary. See here, he has his Bachelor of Corporate Communication listed out and his expected graduation date. Also, in his work experience, he lists the Legislative Human Resources offices. For somebody like me who doesn't live in Madison, Wisconsin, or has never heard of this office, a short and detailed brief description of what the Legislative Human Resources office is would be beneficial to the interviewer or the person who is reviewing this resume. So try to include more information as possible, like scan W-2s, I-W-9s, and personnel files, to accomplish what? To, have more accurate details and record finding for some database system that the Legislative Human Resources offices hold. What was the purpose for? Created policy manuals and safety protocols to do what? To accomplish what, right? All of these details let the interviewer know that you really understood the roles and responsibilities of the job that you were performing. Another thing, he was a bar back and busboy. Great. However, is irrelevant to the job that he is applying for now. If not, take it off. And again, explain to the interviewer that you were working during this time. However, the experience, the work experience was not relevant to the job that I'm applying for. And then we have Ms. Emily Fiddler. She had extensive work history on her resume. Again, her personal information has been whited out. She mentions she has a bachelor's degree in health communication with special education minor. Again, I asked her to include information on what the Gardens at Ridgestone is, what she did as an activity aide, how many residents did she lead in these group activities, what type of exercise classes and art projects were accomplished. Things that are just small details to, help the reader, because every time that someone reads your resume, they won't be there in person. A lot of times at career fairs, which I'll talk about later on, they're asking you to upload your information to a website or on an iPad or some other digital device, and they may not have an actual opportunity to talk to you. So everything that you're telling them has to come, or everything they know about you has to come from this resume. So you want to be very detailed as possible. She does a good job of creating levels with her spaces and indents and bolds and italics to differentiate different things on her resume. So she did a wonderful job at that. Again, biggest takeaway about interviews, about resume tips, is it's all about the details. Details, details, details. Next, giving examples of what professional attire is, right? Dress for the occasion. If the occasion is business, then dress like you mean business. Why is it appropriate attire important in the workplace? Appearance is a large reflection of your self-image, your level of confidence, your judgment, your creativity, your reliability. It enhances the probability of success by making a positive first impression, conveys professionalism, and establishes a trust between you and your coworkers, that they know that you're going to be presentable when you come to work. Understand the elements of the company's mission and how that affects your style of dress. Professional attire is a must for a professional interview. However, once you get hired, you may find that the everyday work attire is a little bit more laid back. Like, for example, I work in a very large company. We have people that talk to the customer on a daily basis. We have people who don't see the customer at all. You have people who have a good mix between the two. So for the people who don't see the customer, who are tucked away in a lab or on a manufacturing line, wearing jeans and a t-shirt or a team jersey is perfectly acceptable for the work that they do. However, if you have someone that is engaged with the customer on a regular basis, engaging in seminars or even attending recruiting events, professional or business casual attire is expected. There's been times when I've given a full out presentation in a Ravens jersey, and it was perfectly acceptable because that was the culture of the place that I worked for. Your clothing should not distract or detract from your primary mission. Your primary mission is getting employment. Dark or medium color suits and solid or conservative stripes. Suits are preferred, no sports coats or business casual attire unless it's specifically stated that business casual attire is acceptable. Now, the picture I have with my man in the cat colored suit, unless you're interviewing for Carol Baskins and you're saying, hello, cool cats and kittens, or you're interviewing for Barnum and Bailey, this suit is not going to cut it. Dark or medium color suits and solid or conservative stripes. Most importantly, wear what you have. Please do not go out and try to break the bank, trying to get some tailored suit or some fancy shoes or a shiny belt buckle. Wear what you have that closely resembles these guidelines as possible, right? I've never known anybody to get hired because they had on a designer suit. Some examples of what professional attire look like, other than Carol Baskin's husband here, are dark colored suits and solid color or conservative stripes, solid colored dress shirts, conservative tie. For the ladies, you have two-piece pantsuit or skirt suit in a solid color, conservative stripes. You have suit trousers hemmed with little or no break, 3-button coat, matching skirt suit, V-colored white cotton blouse, etc. These are some solid, strong examples of professional attire to wear on your interview. Also of note, ensure that your nails are clean or polished. Do not go overboard with multiple colors and embellishments. Ladies, if you wear makeup, let the look be natural as best. Avoid dark or bright colored colors. Gentlemen and ladies, make sure your hair is pulled back and away from your face. Next slide. Make a positive first impression. Very important. Very, very important, especially this first bullet for us fellow millennials. Scrub your social media. Social media, as a friend of mine says, social media is the devil. I've seen and I've known of several people who have not gotten a job opportunity because of the things that they post on their social media. It's very important to watch what you post. Even if you're using an alias username, companies can still find you. They have trained social media experts whose job is to post to social media, but they also may or may not be responsible for looking up potential candidates in their social media pages to see the type of things that they post. Because ultimately, when you are hired by a company, you are a reflection of their company. So please be mindful of what you post and know that if you delete something, It is never permanently deleted from the internet. It can always be found in some form or fashion. However, you will never hear in an interview that the interviewer said, "We found on your social media XYZ," because I'm not even sure if it's legal for them to look up your social media. However, they will have what they found on your social media in the back of their mind. Do not give them any reason not to hire you because of something that you posted on your social media, okay? Before you post, ask yourself, does this post represent myself as a well-rounded, responsible person? Does this post make me a culture fit for the company or industry that I'm aiming to be a part of? Wear appropriate, interview appropriate clothing. Show up to your interview at least 15 to 20 minutes prior to your scheduled time. Please turn off your cell phones once you've entered the building. Be gracious, very, very important. Be gracious to everyone that you encounter. From the security guard, to the desk attendant, to the custodian, to the CEO. Treat everyone with the same level of respect. You'll be surprised at how many times an interviewer escorts a candidate out of the building after the interview was over and will ask the desk attendant, the janitor, or the security guard, how did that person carry themselves while they were waiting for me to start the interview? Because that expectation is for you to be on your best behavior during the interview. Everybody's going to present themselves in the best light when they know they're being watched. However, when it comes to presenting yourself to someone who cannot do anything for you, such as security guard or the janitor or the desk attendant, how do you treat them? It says a lot about your character when you're not being watched. Because they look at that as, well, if I'm not sitting over this person's shoulder watching them do their work, can I depend on them to do their work when they know I'm not watching them? Bring a notepad, pen, a hard copy of your resume, and your list of prepared questions that we went over on slide 3. Offer a firm handshake, but please do not break their hand. Next slide. Interviewing tips. Take your time in answering your questions. There's no rule that says you have to answer a question in light speed time. Give yourself an opportunity to process a meaningful response to the question. If you don't have an answer or can't give an example to the scenario that the interviewer is proposing, it is perfectly okay to say, well, that hasn't been my experience yet. However, I believe if I was to be presented with this situation, I would take these steps to solve the problem or find a solution, etc. This gives yourself an opportunity to show your creativity. It also shows the interviewer that you have critical thinking skills to solve a problem that you haven't been presented with before. Because the fact of the matter is, every problem was new to somebody before they encountered it. So even the most smartest people, intelligent people in the world, at some point in time, they came across something that was new to them and they had to figure out a way to figure it out. They don't expect you to be the world's smartest person when you come into the room, right? Be enthusiastic and be prepared to explain how your skills are matched for the company and the position. I skipped one, I'm sorry. If it's a panel interview, spread your attention as evenly as possible to everyone that is on the panel. Most importantly though, focus your attention the most on the panelist that makes you feel the most comfortable, or the panelist that asks you the question at hand. Everyone isn't a gifted speaker, okay? Everyone can't command a room of tens of hundreds of people and spread their attention evenly amongst everybody, right? Some of us are more recluse and have a hard time speaking in front of people. However, this is an interview and that is a part of the process. So please speak to the person in the room that makes you to feel the most comfortable, because when you're comfortable, you're able to express your thoughts and opinions in a manner that's best representative of you and what you're trying to accomplish. Be enthusiastic and prepared to explain how your skills are matched for the company and the position. Convince the interviewer that your motivation will continue along after the hiring process ends. Use your speech to convey enthusiasm, but not silliness. For example, a person with a disability, like myself, I'm very detail oriented, and it allows me to excel at my job. I'm very detailed about the things when I go out, where I'm going out to, where I'm parking in parking lots, how things are situated in my home. You know, I do things in an organized fashion. That is my natural thought process. So when it comes to my work life, I conduct myself in the same manner. This allows you an opportunity to market yourself and allow yourself to speak the skills that will separate you from any other candidate they're interviewing for this position. Use positive language during your interview. Project positive emotions during your interview. The words we say and use say a great deal about us and our motivation to do the work that we're interviewing for. Tailor your language to make your interviewer feel how positive you are specifically about the role that you're applying for. You are your biggest advocate. That's the biggest takeaway from this slide. No one knows your needs and accommodations better than you do. No one knows your skills and abilities better than you do. Do your best to convey that to the interviewer and express confidence that if given the proper accommodations to do the job, you will excel. Also express that the accommodations that you need are not a big burden financially to the company, and that if given those accommodations, you will get the job done and produce just like everybody else on your team will. So, in this new norm that we're in, with everything being virtual, for example, this summit, I was very much looking forward to the opportunity to seeing you all in person and being able to visit Madison, Wisconsin for the first time in my life. However, due to COVID-19's presence, a lot more things are virtual now than they ever have been before. So, how do we conduct ourselves during virtual career fairs and virtual interviews? Dress the part. On-camera interviews are much like in-person interviews. Only difference is usually only the interviewer can see what you're wearing from the waist up, but you're still supposed to conduct yourself in the same manner as if it was a face-to-face interview. Same guidelines and dress still applies, we previously went over. Even if you have a phone screening, a lot of companies do over the phone screens before they even set up a virtual meeting or in-person meeting. Dress the part. Put on a professional or business casual attire to put yourself in professional mode and train your mind to that this is an interview. You also want to do a test run of the career fair platform. Technology, everything is technology based these days, and you want to make sure you have all the tools and plugins and necessary items that you need to be able to log onto the link or website that the career fair is being run on. Testing early gives you an opportunity to find a device that works for the link or platform if your current technology does not. Making sure your technology works in advance, again, decreases the stress that you put on yourself leading up to the interview. Just like preparing and going to visit the physical site beforehand, testing your technology and making sure it works properly on the medium that the career fair is being held on. All of that is geared towards eliminating your stress so you can come into your interview cool, calm, collected, and ready to present yourself in the best possible light. One of the most important things about virtual career fairs is picking your background location wisely. Whether this means ensuring that you're dressed appropriately and professionally, or the way you conduct yourself, It could be equal. It should be equal to that of any other interview. Where you take this virtual meeting matters, with everyone spending more time at home due to working from home and grade school children learning from home. You want to be in a quiet, secluded area if possible, where you have little to no distractions via person or noise in the background. Be mindful of what's behind you. You want to present yourself usually in a against a solid colored wall or some type of backdrop such as a bookcase, things of that nature. You don't want your backdrop to be looking over a yard or a pool area, because you don't want your interviewer to be distracted by what's going on behind you. You want your interviewer's attention to solely be focused on you, the things that you're saying, and the skills that you can provide to the company in the role that you're applying for. Remember that body language matters. In an interview, in a virtual interview, just like an in-person interview, body language matters. Be cognizant of what you're doing while you're on screen. I made a mistake earlier by putting my hand in my face because I forgot I was on camera just that quick. Any recruiter knows that building rapport with a candidate is crucial to the process, as an important aspect of gaining trust in a candidate is maintaining eye contact as much as possible. Now, I'm aware that eye contact for everyone isn't as easy. And even some of us who have physical challenges, eye contact is harder, it's easier said than done. However, try your best to maintain as much eye contact with the interviewer as possible, with the screen as possible. While I know I mentioned preparing for the interview with prepared questions before, try your best not to look down at your note sheet or any notes that you have written to prepare yourself for this interview as much as possible. Try to memorize your responses, try to memorize your questions as much as possible so you can maintain eye contact as much as possible. Let's see. Recap of the key takeaways. Again, if you don't do your homework, it doesn't matter how good you present yourself, how good your resume looks. Do your homework. If you don't do your homework, it is not a good look. Resumes is all about your details, details, details. Fill in as much as you possibly can, express yourself as much as you possibly can. Wear what you have when it comes to professional attire. Again, please do not go out trying to break the bank thinking that the best look in the world is going to get you hired. Your skills is what's going to get you hired. However, you do need to present yourself in the best possible light, but do not break the bank trying to be a fashionista or a fashion nova or whatever the words the kids say these days. You are your biggest advocate. Speak on your behalf because you know yourself the best. Closing slide, leave it open for questions and answers if we have the capability. Listed is my contact information if you have any follow-up questions that you want to ask. And also listed are my social media handles, so you can see some of the information that I present on my social media so you can get an idea of things.
So, Tip, I do have a question that I would like for you to address the audience, and it is very niched in terms of when you are a person with a disability, and let's just use mobility as an issue or as an example rather. So when you're dressing for an interview, when you have those type of stipulations, what's the best type of clothing for males and females, especially if they have mobility issues?
I'm sorry, I lost you for a second, Doc. So I was trying to figure out what was happening here, but
Okay.
I caught the tail end of your question. I believe you were asking about attire for people who have mobility issues.
So I want to make it, I don't want to make it too niched, but I do want to make it niched in terms of, with different disability issues, people face different challenges. And when it comes to attire, what would you suggest for persons who have mobility issues, who may be in a chair or a scooter or some type of device that helps to get them around? What clothing is appropriate for them? You know, if you're thinking about hem lines for women or, you know, slacks for gentlemen, can you talk a little bit more about that?
So sure, because I can talk extensively about that because you know I'm in the chair as well. So for me, I try my best, especially for professional interviews. I try my best to use dark colored clothing, dark colored suits, dark colored pants, because I know in the process of me pushing my chair, my my forearms rub up against my wheel, and the wheel's touching the ground. It collects a lot of dust, and on a light colored suit that will show on my clothing. So dark color suits for me sort of kind of hide the dust and debris that are collected from me hitting my chair when I'm pushing to my interview or I'm pushing to um, any place that I'm going to. I would suggest not wearing loose fitted clothing because you know they sag, they hang, and you know, of course, you can get dirty. They can get dirty on your mobility device that way. Um, I would try to suggest because for me, I have big shoulders, I have broad shoulders, so I need a lot of range of motion in my shoulders to push them to use my chair. I try to use clothing that's at least a jacket that's a size bigger to allow for that range of motion. Um, but also being mindful that you don't want your suit to fit baggy as well. So it's a fine line between trying to, especially for us wheelchair users, a fine line between allowing wearing clothing that allows us range of motion, but also not looking like we're wearing a zoot suit.
I like that. So as we're continuing this conversation, I want to go just a little bit further in terms of, again, you know, the day of interviews or when you have a specific time to make an appointment, and you know, as Murphy Law would have it, when you're trying to be on time, something goes wrong. So can you talk to, you know, and I know this is additional preparation that persons with disabilities have to contend with. Like I'll give an example for me. Um, because I am a dyslexic, I have to think critically about what I say because my words become jumbled in my brain, and I will say something that doesn't make sense if I'm not very thought provocative and trying to figure it out. So, you know, I'm thinking about those instances where, you know, if you have a motorized chair, make sure it has juice that day,
Mhm.
or you know, thinking about tires because you never know, you know, the day that you need to be on time, something will happen. So, can you talk
Right.
about that preparation? I know you talked about preparing for the actual interview itself, but can you talk about some of the things that people should, you know, given what their own particular disability may be, how they need to prepare, you know, physically and equipment wise for such an important task?
Yeah, basically earlier I talked about a little bit about visiting the location of the interview in advance as possible if you have the ability to map out the best way to getting to your interview location, as well as ensuring that you have what you need to be able to negotiate the space that you're interviewing in, and mapping out best place to park, best interest to come into. Um, Also, when it comes to mention a response right away, I don't believe there's any rule that says you need to answer a question in light speed. You give yourself an opportunity to process what's being said, internalize it, and develop your response, as it comes to you. Everyone is not going to be, a shoot off the hip type of person. Everyone, sometimes some of us need time to process, what's being said to us. And it's perfectly okay to say, Okay, I'm processing, what you're asking me. Like, communicate. Like I said before, you're your best advocate. You know your disability the best, better than anybody else. So say yes. I heard your question. I'm thinking of a response, and then speak as your answer comes to you. Like, usually, most HR professionals are reasonable people, and they've dealt with people from all walks of life, and they understand that everybody's not the same. So, it's okay to express that you're formulating a response in your head, and then you will give that response when you have the ability to give it. But it is very important leading up to an interview, the advanced preparation, especially for people with disabilities, um, on what they will need and leading up to the interview. Like I said before, visiting the location is suggested, and if you can't physically visit the location, do a Google map search of the location. Um, they have satellite images that will allow you to zoom into the location to see if there are steps available, to see if there are steps to get into the building, if there's no ramp. And like I said earlier, it gives you an opportunity to bring your own accommodations if you're able to. Like, some of my friends, they have in their minivans, the who are wheelchair users, they have portable ramps in their van that will allow them access to go up, one or two steps in a building so they can get where they need to go. So
So here's another question. So, we're hoping that our students are taking these tips to um, prepare themselves for that interview process. And the other portion of the You Will conference is for employers to be able to look at people with disabilities for a work base. What would you say to a person with disabilities who is going for an interview with a company who has not made themselves accessible? And let's just say it's a small company just starting, and a lot of their amenities or requirements, they haven't brought themselves up to code yet. And so an applicant is having difficulty, navigating the space to even get to the interview. Would you encourage that person? How would you encourage that person to make those things known to that employer, even though they're in that interview process? Because where we are now, I think a lot of people have addressed compliance and accessibility issues, but some people haven't. And so, if you're going to interview and then you find yourself in a place that is not accessible to you, regardless of whatever your disability is, how would you bring that up to that potential employer?
So that is a unique challenge. Um, unfortunately, it's not an uncommon one, because the world we live in still is very inaccessible in a sense. Earlier this summer, I was a panelist on the 30th anniversary celebration with the George and Barbara Bush Foundation of the signing of the Americans with Disability Act that was signed in 30 years ago. And here we are 30 years later, still having these conversations about, workplace accommodations and accessibility. I would try my best to suggest alternative work arrangements as best as possible to the person that I'm or the company that I'm interviewing for. You can ask if there are work from home arrangements. You can ask if they have any other satellites sites available that you can work out of. You can express that the needs of your disability, the cost of being able to create these accommodations are not extensive. I believe there are even organizations out there that will help workplaces pay for the accommodations that a candidate or an employee will need to be able to work. Um, yeah, basically, I would just express your accommodations and let them know that they aren't costly, and if given those accommodations, that you are confident that you'll be able to complete the job that's being asked of them.
Thank you so much for that. And I think my last question, or not so much a question, is what are your parting words to our panelists or our participants, our students who are where you were, so, just a few years ago in terms of getting ready to graduate and trying to launch into a career? What would be your parting words to them as they're getting ready to undertake this journey?
Without giving away too much of my keynote tomorrow, I will say exercise patience. In large part, in venturing into the world, is that you're going places beyond your comfort zone, and a lot of those places may not have encountered someone with your type of disability, so may not have thought to include what you need into the design of their workspace, into the design of their living space. So exercise patience, try your best not to get frustrated. And like I said, be your biggest advocate to express what you need, and let them know that an inclusive work environment for people with all abilities only makes things for able-bodied individuals easier. Because if it's easy for me to negotiate and I have a disability, then it's that much easier for you to negotiate as an able-bodied individual. So try to sell it to a standpoint that what helps me also helps you. Try to prepare and plan in advance as much as possible. There are going to be times to where you feel as if this disability hiring event was just a show, or just something to be a check in the box for HR. But do know that there are people who are really interested in hiring people with disabilities, and they are interested in building an inclusive workforce environment. And to stay encouraged, you may not get the first job you apply for, you may not get the second job you apply for, but there is an opportunity out there for you if you stick to it and continue to apply and prepare yourself as best as possible for that opportunity.
Tipper, thank you so much for joining us today and for your expertise in this area. And I hope that our participants were able to glean something from your lived experience, as well as the tips that you have shared with us on today. I really do like that. I wish I could take it for myself, but it wouldn't work. We appreciate all that have worked with us and listened to us on today. At 4:00, we will have our actual closing session for the UWorld Forum on today. And then tomorrow morning, bright at 9:30, we will begin with our second day of our UWorld presentations. And tomorrow at the 1 p.m. Central Standard Time hour, our featured keynote presenter will be none other than William Tipper Thomas III, and he will deliver our keynote and give us some personal artifacts from his own journey, being a person who is living with disabilities, but also thriving also in the workspace. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to the greater participation as the days come by. Thank you so much. Take care.